Here we go with a stream. Oh yeah, we're gonna do a stream. Oh yeah. Hello everybody. Welcome to the stream where we've got a little bit of stuff to discuss around the fact that Leeds United seem to be heading towards the sale of a centre-back, specifically in the form of Sebastian Bornauw. This has been rumoured a little bit from the German side recently and has only recently become a little bit more sort of solid on the Leeds side in terms of reporting, but we'll get into that in a few minutes' time. Before we do so, how are we all doing? I hope we're doing incredibly well. If we're not, then that's a little bit of a shame, but it's okay. We can sort that. The day has plenty of time to turn around and improve, which hopefully we're all able to do. But diving into things, Sebastian Bornauw, Leeds United player last season, although he didn't really play that much football. If I go FBref Leeds United and just have a look at the amount of minutes that he got last season, it was presumably less than he will have wanted to play, but that's sort of the norm. So specifically, he found himself playing in 17 matches in all competitions. He got 9 starts in all competitions and a grand total of 768 minutes, which is a little bit disappointing. In said minutes, he sort of performed to an okay standard. He didn't really sort of stand out. He wasn't like a shining beacon within the side, but he was sort of fine. There wasn't anything special about him, but there wasn't anything god-awful about him either, which is alright enough. Now, however, we have a little bit of news surrounding the potential for a move away. So, this is the Athletics article on the situation. And it's come out via Sebastiaan Bornauw, who is effectively their Bundesliga expert, and Baron Cross, who is their Leeds United guy, which is kind of good. If Baron's all over a bit of news, you can tell that there's at least some truth in it. And the way that this one is being effectively panned out is that Hamburg are confident of completing a deal for Leeds United defender Sebastian Bornauw this week, which is effectively, if the Athletic are saying that a club is very, very confident, then it's on the brink of being done, as far as I can tell, based on the way that they tend to do their reporting. Bornauw moved to Leeds last summer, having spent 6 years in the Bundesliga with Köln and Wolfsburg. So the Bundesliga, let's be honest, seems like it would be a predictable sort of outcome for someone like a Sebastian Bornauw. Sebastian Bornauw is a decent enough centre-back, sure, but he's not one that has tended to sort of shine amongst opponents. He doesn't really stand out a hell of a lot, especially at Leeds United, and he performed significantly better in recent years in the Bundesliga, so if he's looking for a move, it's likely to be in that direction. In terms of why he's moving, as far as I can tell, all of the discussion seems to be around the fact that he's not particularly happy with the amount of minutes that he had. He's someone that didn't really get on the pitch too much, and he probably arrived thinking, you know what, I can force my way in, I can be a starting central defender. And the reality of the situation wasn't quite that. The reality of the situation was more of a, you're not realistically good enough to start in the Premier League for Leeds United, so we'll have you as a rotation style player. The specific line, as has been said by Baron Cross on his Twitter, is that the Leeds United line in the deal sheet is that Hamburg are confident of signing him this week. The Leeds end has acknowledged the Bundesliga club's interest and has intimated it's a deal which could happen, which is Leeds United not rejecting the fact that this is a move that's on. It'll be a case of, if Hamburg are able to put up enough money, we don't really have a reason to say no, because Sebastian Bornauw is not fighting for that starting spot in the squad. He's not someone that we desperately need to keep a hold of. If he were to leave, I don't think anyone would think it was too much of a shame. Yeah, he's a reasonable footballer, but he doesn't stand out, which is sort of a shame, but also that's sort of just the reality of the situation. When it comes to who we will potentially be replacing him with, that's where things get a little bit interesting. Before I do all of that, though, there are about 50 of you watching at the moment, so if you could do me a favour, and if you could pop a 0 in the chat if you wouldn't want to sell Bornauw, and a 1 if you would, assuming that we won't make a loss on him, I think we'll roughly break even. As Danny said, we paid 6 million for Bornauw, anything over that would be good. I think his book value right now is about 4.5 million-ish, maybe 4.8. So we'll see. I don't mind the sale. Michael is fine with him going. Danny says 0-1, so I'm going to assume that's just a 1. Azumi 1. Jan Vidar 1. Kieran says 0, which is sort of interesting. We got a 1 from Valhalla, 0 from T-Rex Leeds Forever. What a name. Is it a sale or loan? What I have heard is sale. I've not heard anything along the lines of loan, which makes a lot of sense because we're not really a side that looks like we are happy to loan players out at the minute. All of the sort of noise surrounding Ramazani, as an example, is sale or at least loan with obligation, because at least that moves players on. That sort of gets things shifting a little bit, and the finances swing more positively in our direction, as opposed to what happens a lot of the time, where it's just you loan a player out, the club go, and it comes back. They're wanting a loan with option. They might be wanting a loan with option, but it's a question of whether we allow that, and I feel like we wouldn't necessarily be happy with that in the slightest. Sure, they might want a loan, but if we don't agree to a loan and they still want the player, then all they're going to have to do is sign him. I do think it's a quite interesting theory that was popped in by Githyanki, who says, I believe we're hearing the back end of a Leeds United incoming. We would not be moving him on without someone else coming in first. And there are some names that have reportedly been on the list in terms of players that Leeds United are looking at. The first of those would be, as was also mentioned in the chat a little bit earlier, Egan Riley, CJ Egan Riley specifically, who is a pretty reasonable centre-back, if I can find him and remember who he is. There we go. Currently at Marseille, which is quite interesting. I didn't know that he was at Marseille. Let's have a little bit of a look at his sort of numbers and information and stuff like that. Yes, at Marseille, moved there from Burnley by the looks of it, and didn't really play many minutes at all last season, which is sort of understandable. Marseille are very much at the top of the pile when it comes to French football. Not the very top, obviously, but they're at the very least firmly in that conversation and have very, very good centre-backs as a result, which meant that Egan Riley has relatively struggled to break through. At 23 years of age, he sort of suits the profile of play that we've been looking at this season, being young and promising and potential to grow, not only in ability but in value, so it sort of fits that as well, and would be one of those moves that makes sense. On the other side of things, we've got the name that is right here, which has been recommended by Danny Rumsey, which is a name that we've been linked with for a very, very, very long time. The Borussia Mönchengladbach defender, Nico Elvedi. Nico Elvedi is also a centre-back. I believe he tends to play on the right-hand side, which is sort of fine, because I think Bornauw is also right-footed, off the top of my head. But he's a player that doesn't necessarily look like he's going to be sticking around at Gladbach for a very, very long time, because if I can find him... Hello, Nico. His contract only has a year left on it. We have been linked with him time and time and time and time again. Daniel Farke reportedly quite likes the guy, which all sort of starting to add up. He can play at right back. There is a tendency to say that he suits the profile of player that we were looking at last season more than the profile of player that we're looking at this season, based on the fact that he is 29 years of age and he is over 6 foot tall. But we are also potentially still looking at the Big Bastards FC thing this season in addition to last season. His current value is considered very, very, very low, but that's less of a indictment on his current level and more a sort of acknowledgement of the fact that his contract is getting lower and lower and lower, and it looks like any conversations between him and his club aren't exactly leading to a greater chance of a contract coming to pass. Looks like one of those moves that we might get done. Would be a potentially tricky one to do in terms of prizing him away from his club, because again, he's got a hell of a lot of appearances there, but he wasn't really a constant in their side last season. So there's a pretty decent opportunity to get that one done, I would say. CJ Riley's Trafford's best friend, also a picture of him and Trafford Boucher when we signed Trafford by the media team announcing Trafford signing. That's pretty cool. That'd be quite good if that was a nice little sort of Easter egg that is like, look out, because we're also signing Egan Riley. But I'm not entirely sure. I think it's more a case of Trafford and Egan Riley were roughly the same age and played for Burnley at the same time in a promotion side. So I think that's potentially a little bit of a factor, as opposed to he very much wants to come to Leeds to be with his bestie again, because that doesn't really feel like that's necessarily the case. I'm going to be the first one to see Trafford against Augsburg, and I'm right behind the Leeds game. You mean goal? But I'm also going to see him against Augsburg, which is very, very fun. I think Ramazani, Nonto, maybe Bornauw will be going this window. I think Bornauw is almost certainly on the way out now. Because I don't feel like this news would have picked up to the extent that it has today in the event that it wasn't happening. I think Ramazani is also a probably. I don't see Ramazani sticking around at Leeds United next season because I don't really see that relationship with Daniel Farke being too positive at the minute. In terms of Nonto, that's more of a 50-50 one. I think of the players that are potentially going to be on the way out, Nonto is fairly low on the list. They were also in the Man City Academy. I forgot that bit. Thank you for letting me know that. I forgot that aspect. But yeah, I think Piru is more likely than Nonto, but Piru is also not looking super promising for an exit because the relative quiet when it comes to links is incredibly surprising because I was absolutely certain we'd have a little bit more noise in it by now. We have not, which is a shame because I think we could do with the money more than we could do with Piru, but that's sort of fine. In fact, let's see. Are there any links with Piru to anybody? Rangers are talking about potentially signing Piru because they want a short-term option. Piru's only got 1 season left in his contract, which is fair enough. Yeah. I think he's got to go somewhere, is my opinion on it. I don't really see him sticking around at Leeds. I don't think that benefits him in the slightest. Hello there, Sean. I'm doing pretty well, and I'm also very much looking forward to tomorrow's match. It's gonna be a weird, tense one. I can see someone like a Muharamovic maybe leaving one in to try and get himself sort of up with the fans, if that makes a little bit of sense. I don't know how much sense it does necessarily make, but it'd be quite good to see us absolutely trying to plough through them from time to time, which would be quite good. Very off topic, I've seen an image going around, typically it's from Scum. Yes, that's one I'm just going to skip over because I'll be honest with you, we can leave that unpleasantness. I think the chants around him are ones that we also need to stop, as well as visiting supporters need to stop, because it's, as far as tragedy chanting goes, right, and I've had this conversation a few times on the stream, so my apologies if you're a little bit bored of it, but it kind of needs discussing. A lot of the tragedy chanting stuff seems to be focused on, yeah, but did anybody die? Which is sort of understandable, but at the same time, it does equally mean that the victims of him are still here to sort of witness everyone singing about it, and that makes it feel a little bit like we shouldn't be actively making our own stadium a deeply unsafe place for the many, many, many women that were affected in this region. So if we could not do the chanting of his name and fingering people's mums, that would be probably quite good. So let's dodge that one. Thank you very much. It's going to be good to see Trafford playing. It will. There is a chance that Trafford plays against Scum. I'm not entirely sure how high that chance necessarily is, but it's not 0, which is good. It was 0 against Leipzig because he was still on his sort of post-World Cup holidays. But at the moment, I believe Trafford is after his 3-week break, which is quite nice, and it opens things up a little bit more, which I enjoy. I quite like the fact that we're going to be able to have a better idea of what our first 11 is going to look like at the start of the season. Just to check, is that... Oh, bastard. It's Leeds versus Manchester in the cricket as well. Interesting. I can see Trafford playing versus Scum. I can see him potentially playing against Scum. I think maybe a half. I think it's going to be very interesting if they want to play Darlow, though. If they want to play Darlow, I cannot see corners being a fun experience for him, because it's just going to be all over him. I think from set pieces, we're going to make Darlow's life hell if he's actually there. Another loan with an option to buy with pathetic selling players. Right, 4 candles. There's not even a deal agreed for Bornauw, which I feel like you've immediately jumped to, what if it was the worst possible scenario? And I feel like jumping to, what if it's the worst possible scenario is, in its own way, absolutely pathetic. Because so far, this window, have the 49ers given anyone anything to complain about? Or have we gotten Wilson, who was our main target? Have we gotten the best young goalkeeper potentially around? Also, yes. Maybe Guillaume Rest is also another candidate, but he's still firmly in that conversation. Have we got a centre-back that not only matches Struijk, but probably improves on him? Also, yes. I think if you're looking at this window and going, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, you're looking at everything the wrong way. You're looking at it from, is the worst possible thing going to happen? And the reality of the situation is no. Because I think we're beyond the worst possible thing happening. I think we're in a pretty nice spot at the moment. And I understand the people that look at the negatives in Leeds United's sort of transfer business and everything like that. But you don't need to. Like, when things are good, accept that they're good, because otherwise you'll look back and go, ha, I was right, things went wrong in the end. It's like, cool, they might have gone wrong in the end, but that doesn't really matter. Because we spent all that time enjoying the football, and you spent all that time going, well, if things are wrong again, I don't like it. Like, one of those is a much better way to live, and I would firmly recommend that. I can see Dan James possibly going if we get a winger or cam in. Yeah, potentially. I think it's a question of we need someone... Oh!
Big up, Joe.
Thank you very much. All boxed up. I appreciate that. I think the issue with Dan James is we would potentially need a little bit of interest from clubs to actually get that done in the first place, because he's not... I think the sides that would potentially look at him are ones in the Championship that are on the brink of going up, or ones in the Premier League that are desperate for someone in order to stay up. But I think it's more likely to lean in the Championship direction. And at the same time, he's still got value at Leeds, so I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen with that one. I don't personally think he goes, but... Healy, Weltek, I think Newcastle get relegated and Coventry stay up. I don't think Coventry stay up. That one, absolutely not. But I do personally think that we see Newcastle in a lot of danger. Losing Tonali is big. In addition to that, losing Guimaraes is huge. In addition to losing both of those, losing Anthony Gordon, your main creative outlet, is colossal. In addition to that, losing your manager, who's been a very, very constant presence in your side, is vast. And all of that comes simultaneously when the most sort of standout move that they've made this summer... Hold on, if I just bring up Transfermarkt. Premier League 26-27. So I can see what actual moves they've done. There we go. Right. Newcastle's transfers in are, so far, Bazumana Torre, sorry, who I have never heard of in my life, from Hoffenheim. Okay. Alaji Bamba, who is a reasonable enough defensive midfielder. I still think it's an overpay. Lucas Hornacek, who is, again, a reasonably good goalkeeper, but they mainly wanted James Trafford, and we just got there first. And then I do not recognise either Sean Steer for 23 million euros, which is an obscene amount of money to be paying, or Ewan Zhaoen, who is a goalkeeper from Rem, who they are signing to not be their number one goalkeeper that they spent about £20 million on. It's insane. They've spent a lot of money. They've spent 161 million euros, according to Transfermarkt, on not a lot of proven quality, whilst having lost a hell of a lot of proven quality. So I think all they're doing is inviting problems for themselves, and I'm quite glad that we're not in that same position. Like, you have a look at what we've done so far. It's not bad. Trafford in, brilliant. Broke our own transfer record, wonderful. Muharemovic very nearly broke our own transfer record, and a big upgrade. Harry Wilson for free, whilst being off the back of his best Premier League season. There's nothing wrong with this window at all, to be honest with you. I've had the second best transfer window in the Prem. Sunderland haven't signed anyone recently, really. Yeah, I had a look, and Sunderland have signed one player. And I had a look at their subreddit recently to get a rough sort of idea of how their fans are actually feeling, what the vibe is with Sunderland. And a lot of it feels like, oh, shit, we've not done much here. At all. Because they had last season where it was a case of, yeah, we'll win every bidding war and we'll complete every signing that we could possibly want to. And then they get to this summer and they're like, right, so far we've signed Thomas Munier on a free at the age of 34. So where were we planning on, like, adding to the squad? Because they've got a hell of a lot that they do need to do. They're not the perfect side. They've lost a couple of players as well. Like Mayenda going, sure, they won't have minded Mayenda leaving, but it's still an option. Masuaku, again, they're not going to be too bothered. Pembele, not going to be too bothered. They've got a few players that have left on a free, whatever. Losing Gertrude, that one's sort of their choice because they had an option to sign him. But I think they've invited a lot of problems to themselves. Meanwhile, at the same time, we have had a vastly better window, and I think we've learned the lessons from our second season last time. Where in our second season, we got Jack Harrison on a permanent, which not really, that doesn't really count. I can't believe that Sean is making the exact same point as me at the exact same time. Wonderful. Whereas we have already done Trafford and Wilson and Muharamovic. They're bumping into the issue where in our second season, we did Harrison on a permanent, Junior, Firpo and Dan James. It feels like they did the first season, went, that's fine, we're comfy, and then didn't really save any resources for the second season, which is maybe going to lead to that sort of slump that a lot of sides experience in the Premier League, which is going to be even worse for Sunderland, because you also need to consider the fact they're in European football. And that sort of European football isn't going to be kind to them. European football instead is going to kick their fucking teeth in, because they don't only have 38 matches now, they're back up to a championship level of output, because you have your 38 matches, but you've got your 2 cup matches, which puts you up to 40, and potentially more, because you'd hope that you win FA Cup matches, and Europe, which if you only play the league phase of, it might be the Conference League we're in, I'm not sure, but if you only play the league phase, that's another 8 games, which is up to 48, which is the exact same as your baseline championship season. And imagine if they get out of the group phase. Every phase from that point onwards is another 2 games of football, which is going to put a hell of a weight on that squad. And what Sunderland really needed to do is add and add and add and add and add and improve that squad as much as they possibly could. Because, sure, they've got a decent enough side, but you need more depth. Because you're not going to be able to play someone in the Premier League, then on a Thursday, then the Premier League on a Monday, then on the same Thursday. You can't just do that for an entire year. And with that sort of lack of adding depth and adding backup, they could be in proper trouble. Especially when you consider that their budget is going to be tighter than ours this season. Because if you get European football, you can only spend 70% of your revenue as opposed to 85% of your revenue, which is the UEFA rule for it as opposed to the Premier League rule, which, again, tightens things. And it makes things even worse for them. So I think whilst Sunderland will be very, very happy that they got into Europe, fantastic, they needed to treat this window with a hell of a lot more care. And it looks like they're in a situation where they don't have the resources to do that. Have signed Meunier for, I don't even know, what is Thomas Meunier's wage going to be in 2026? Let's have a quick look at what the Capology estimate is, because it's not going to be small. I don't think it has it yet, which is a shame. Yeah, they've not got the estimate there yet, but it's going to be a decent sum of cash, which is going to put them under more and more and more pressure, and I think Sunderland are going to be in for a tougher season than they expect they are, which is funny, I think. They might, I don't want to say they'll be in trouble. I think Newcastle will be in more trouble than they are. I think Hull have potential to be in deep shit. Because, oh, hello, is the stream working? Yes, I think the stream died for a second there. But I think Hull have potential to be in proper trouble, because they've only spent 36 million euros so far confirmed, which it might be a little bit more. They'll have more deals coming, but they already had the weakest squad of the sides coming up, and they've not added much. What have Hull got that they didn't have before? Let's have a look. They have added Konstantinos Soulakis from Olympiakos. Oh my god. Who, of their 38 million euros, I was a little bit wrong, of spending, is 23 million of that in a goalkeeper. And a goalkeeper can do a lot. A goalkeeper can save you a few points over the course of a season. But if you don't have the defence to support them, then it could just be a siege. They could just be constantly all over you, time and time and time and time again. And sure, they've added a couple of other players as well. They spent, apparently, €3.5 million on Jack Butland, which means that of the 38 million, 27 million of that is goalkeepers. Jens Schutterdal is a reasonably good central midfielder. Fine. There's 10 million of euros, another 2.5 on Elliot Stroud from Mjolby. Again, he's reasonable. They've got a couple of frees in. Hidemasa Marita, decent footballer, I suppose. Matt Target, okay. But they've not done enough to improve the squad, which means that I think they're going to be in a little bit of a spiral. And it's going to be interesting to see where they match up to the likes of a Derby, whether they are just the whipping boys of the league, or their manager is actually able to do something with them. Because it's not going to be pretty if it goes the way it could go. They could be in genuine trouble. Which I hope they're not, but also, I don't know. Joffrey going there would also be a pretty big boon for us. It'd be a nice advantage. Hopefully just on a straight permanent, because when we play against them, I would love to play against Gelhardt and see how he does against Rodon and Muharemovic, because I feel like they're going to make a mess of him, which is going to be good stuff, but we'll see. Anyway, so Bornauw, potentially Egan Riley and Elvedi being the replacement sort of that we're looking at, which would be a reasonably good move, I think. In addition to that, there's some other various bits. We've got Ramazani potentially going with a couple of clubs having an interest. We've got Gelhardt, there's interest from Hull, Birmingham, Wrexham. Where he goes, I don't know. I would ideally hope for Hull because I think he deserves to be a key part of a Premier League side at some point, as opposed to just sort of floating around at Championship level. And outside of that, there's not a huge amount to go on about, to be honest with you, which is fine enough, you know. Sunderland spent 180 last season, and we spent 174 between the two. True, but I think we spent ours better. They might have had a good season last year, but I feel like balancing it across the two seasons, because all we necessarily wanted to do was make it. We just wanted to survive, get across the line, which we did. And this season will be the same. We will just be looking to keep on going and survive and all that kind of stuff. But, well, yeah, it's an interesting one. What do you think of some people's takes of Leeds playing scum in a friendly should never happen because of us being rivals? Genuinely, I don't mind it. Because, and I've seen people say that it dilutes it and all that kind of stuff, the match isn't any more friendly than it would be in the Premier League. Like, we played against Man United last season at Elland Road to a relatively boring draw. It was not the most interesting games of football. And I think we kind of forget that. Like, we weren't sort of out for blood in that game. We were like, get out of this with something. Because at the end of the day, at that point, it's less of a, we need to beat them for pride, and more of a, we need something for survival. Whereas, again, in a pre-season friendly, I guess there's not really any stakes, but at the same time, you don't need stakes. The match generates its own stakes. You also combine that with the fact that Darlow's now gone over there, and I'll be honest with you, this is going to be one that a few people will be pissed off with, so I'm going to say it quite quietly into the microphone, right? I quite like the fact that we're doing it abroad, because a lot of people don't like it. But it means that fans in Ireland can see Leeds play against Man United. It's meant that in the past, fans in Australia can do the same. It means that in the past, fans in Sweden can do the same. Like, it's one of the biggest derbies in English football. And I don't see any issue with widening that and making it more available and more accessible to various fans, because it doesn't dilute things in the slightest, because, sure, you might think that, and I like the specific example I saw from someone, I can't remember, it might have been Joe, I'm not certain, but an example I saw was someone saying that you don't see Celtic and Rangers doing this, and it's like, yeah, because Celtic and Rangers play each other every fucking 15 minutes already. If we have a bit of a search for Celtic, I'm going to pull it up on the other monitor, actually. F11 it. There we go. and monitor 2. Right. Okay, show me Rangers. There we go. Head to head. Since the beginning of 2025, Celtic have played Rangers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, with an 8th time set to come next month. They play 4 times a year already, and that rivalry isn't dead. That rivalry isn't over-diluted. There's none of that. That rivalry is still hot and firing and vicious. Playing a rival more times doesn't make it less of a rivalry. If anything, it means that there's more narrative to go on. It means there's more sort of storyline there and more discussion of it. And yeah, it might be a pre-season friendly, but that doesn't mean that the players are going to care any less. It doesn't mean the players are going to go, well, actually, I think I'm happy to lose this one because it's only pre-season. That's not the sort of vibe that I get from any players at Leeds United. For me, having more games that are these sort of big ticket events in pre-season is completely fine. I don't mind fans from around the world being able to watch their team more. I think it's a little bit of an add rather than a loss, but I think this coming season is going to be carnage. Big spenders at the top become House of Cards scenarios. Some's collapsing. Fun and games have put Leeds will do well. I think so. I think we've got a nice sort of firm structure amongst all of that. But ultimately, yeah, I don't mind it. I'm not going to complain. It means we get more football that's interesting, as opposed to Leeds United are playing against York City. Half of the game will be the under-21s. I don't care about that. There was a couple of years ago, we played against Fleetwood, I think, and I went there and it was like, oh, cool, I get to watch our under-21s, and I can't remember who else was in the squad, but it was the under-21s plus one senior player. It's like, oh, right, okay. So I get to watch this meaningless friendly. Whereas right now it's like, okay, let's have some big ticket games of football. Yes, good. Off-season is boring. Make it more interesting, and I'm glad that we're doing that, as opposed to just sort of sitting through basically tripe, which is quite good. The atmosphere will be good, though, I do agree. Jared Garbo, how much have Sunderland brought in sales? A lot more than us. I don't know if they have. Let's have a look. Who have Sunderland sold? Sunderland, this window, have only sold 22 million euros worth of players. Leeds have sold 25 million euros worth of players. We've made more money than Sunderland this window. Wondering if you think we should copy Man City's academy strategy, bridge the gap between us and the top 6. I think we already sort of are. We're sort of playing the game of bring the youth through and move them on. Like, we're getting better at loaning them out as an example and trying to flip them for a bit of profit, and it's going to take a while until we get that operation properly going, but the likes of a Jayden Liner, who we picked up from Liverpool's academy, is ultimately a win. And I think as long as we follow that kind of direction of signing young players with a lot of promise for profit, it's going to go in the right direction for us. Xhaka's 34 next month. Yeah, Xhaka's 34. I think Meunier's nearly 35. It's nuts. I think they're going to lose their legs soon. Public friendly is now important commercially, not just ticket-wise, but shirt sales. Absolutely, yeah. It's genuinely huge, like the ongoing strategy, and it's normal, you know. Great days, Graham. What score was England versus Argentina? Did you make the World Cup, Sean? I don't remember seeing Ireland in the World Cup, but if you want to remind me, that'd be... Did Ireland make the World Cup? No? Interesting. Okay. I'm not entirely sure Ireland are going to make the Euros either, which is going to be very fun. Anyway, the Euros that they're also fucking hosting, which would be an embarrassment if they didn't make it, but that makes it even funnier. Anyway, I'm going to go because I didn't have too long to stream and I've gone a little bit longer than I expected to. If you enjoyed the stream, please pop a like on it. That'd be massively appreciated. 82,000 fans. I know, it's great. I love it. But if you enjoyed, pop a like on the stream. Subscribe if you haven't yet. It's one button down here and it's very easy to just pop, one simple little click and it's free and all that fun stuff. I'm going to leave it there. Hope you all enjoyed. I will see you later. Toodaloo, friendos. If you're enjoying it, Sean, you'd come back more days. So I'll see you tomorrow, dickhead. Ha ha! Toodaloo.